In my last video, we were talking a little bit about the disillusionment of the youth today and the disenfranchisement with the current political trend in this country. And some were even talking about the fact that Islam needs to be reformed, to which we replied already that it's not Islam that needs reform, but the Muslims themselves. Now, pursuant to that, I've got some more feedback with regard to this idea of justice. And I have a clearer picture now of what was asked before when it came to justice. One of the youth was asking about, or rather one of the youth was commenting that as long as the hukum hakam are adhered to, that they have no problem, or that everyone is happy. And now it becomes a little bit clearer to me that the opinion of Islam is simply boiling down to a set of laws. And this is far from what Islam is. So as a result, what we have now is we have a very vibrant, a very intelligent, youthful generation who are not only angry, but they are also disenfranchised with the government. And they are thinking that the kind of government they have today is one that is not just, that is unjust. And that they seek to replace the injustice with what they deem to be just. But the strange thing is, they are not looking within the worldview of Islam itself to find this justice. What they are doing is they are looking more at in terms of philosophical ideologies, not from the Muslim perspective, but from the Western perspective, which is a bit strange, but understandable. If you are not educated or you are not grounded in Islam, in the worldview of Islam, and then you travel to a foreign country, a Western country, and you get educated with their philosophies, and you become impressed with the way their philosophies are explained, and then you think to yourself that maybe this is the kind of ideology I'd like to adopt because it seems reasonable. But I find that to be a little bit of a cop-out, because you don't know your own philosophies, you don't know your own ideologies, you don't know your own traditions, and you are going to a foreign or alien tradition and adopting that and accepting those things as if that is a better alternative. Now, you have to study Islam properly. When we say the worldview of Islam, we are not simply talking about an idea, a global universal idea. We don't mean that. This worldview of Islam is grounded upon the Quran, upon the Hadith, and upon the Sunnah of the Prophet. This is the fundamental elements of the worldview itself. Now, when you look at the current political scenario in this country, and you talk about justice and injustice, and then you look at justice from the point of view of a Western ideological philosophy, you don't seem to think that there is some inefficiencies or deficiencies in those philosophies themselves. For instance, if you are impressed with egalitarianism, another school of modernity, you get impressed by egalitarianism because they say that equality for all. For them, that is justice, where everyone is equal. If you don't like that, then you think to yourself, never mind, we will look at some of the philosophies of Marxism. And then you say to yourself, well, maybe that one also is not suitable for us. Therefore, you look at something else, and you look at the John Rolfe, the political philosophies. You look at those kind of political philosophies and you think, well, this is justice, because they are talking about equality again. Now, these kind of things, although they look attractive, and we are not saying that they are completely wrong. No, of course not. They also have their just element to them. But don't forget that Islam, as a complete worldview and a complete religion, already has described what justice is and how it is applied. And don't forget that because the worldview is based upon the Quran and the hadith and the sunnah of the Prophet, that Islam describes justice in its totality. And what does it say about justice? It doesn't simply mean to put things in its proper place and that's justice. No, it means that justice has a place, that there is a place unique to that thing itself, which is just, and just only to itself and to the system to which it belongs. That is the complete idea. And when we talk about justice in Islam, we don't talk about equality, we talk about fairness, which is different from the egalitarians, which is different from the modernistic ideology. We are talking not about equality, because let me ask you this. If you understood the tradition of Islam and the tradition of learning and wisdom in Islam and knowledge in Islam, one of the greatest teachers of Al-Ghazali was a man by the name of Al-Juwayni. And Al-Juwayni imparted this bezel of wisdom upon Al-Ghazali, who again repeated it himself. What was it that Al-Juwayni told him? Al-Juwayni said that man can be divided into 4 classes, or to 4 species. The first would be he who knows and knows he knows. This man is a knowledgeable scholar, therefore follow him. The second type is he who knows but knows not he knows. This man is like one who's asleep, therefore you should warn him. Then there is he who knows not but knows he knows not. This is the ignorant, therefore you should teach him. And then there's the last kind, he who knows not and knows not he knows not. This is worse than a donkey, therefore you should be far away from him. Now the fact that he has classified the human being into these 4 categories implies that there is no equality. Therefore we should ask this question: is the man of knowledge equal to the man of no knowledge? Is the one who knows equal to the one who knows not? Obviously not. You can't say that they are. If what you mean is that they should be afforded equal opportunity, then we agree with that. There should be an equal opportunity given. But then again, another question should be asked: is the man with knowledge, should he be given the equal opportunity of the man who is ignorant? Or the other way around, should the man who is ignorant be given the same opportunity of one who has knowledge? We can't answer again in the affirmative, because that would be unjust. Because this justice knows its proper place. And therefore, rather than going and adopting an ideology which is foreign and alien to our own tradition and our own religion and our own civilization, why don't we first study our own civilization, our own religion, our own tradition, before we make the judgment? What I'm saying is not that we are not trying to criticize the fact that you are looking for other alternatives. No, by all means look for other alternatives. But what I'm simply saying is Islam and the tradition of learning in Islam has a rich tradition. Do not put that aside without knowing it first. First you study that, be grounded in that, be well versed in that. If you want to study the Western philosophies, by all means do so. But first you have to be grounded and knowledgeable on the Muslim one. That's all we are saying. Because the fact that we have a worldview based on the Quran, we have to understand the Quran, which means we have to understand lots of things. We have to understand tafsir, we have to understand ta'wil, we have to understand history, we have to understand language, we have to understand priority and posteriority of the revelation. We need to know all these things. Not only that, there is the hadith. We have to understand the hadith, the time period of the hadith, who were these hadith directed to, when is the hadith relevant, when is it irrelevant to the present time. But that doesn't mean this irrelevant to the present time means that it might not be relevant in the future. What about the sunnah of the Prophet? Why don't we practice that as well? He practiced real justice. He practiced fairness to all, regardless of whether you're a Muslim or not. It wasn't equality. We don't want to get drawn into a Western paradigm of this discussion when it doesn't really concern us. Now, obviously, the fact that the youth today are looking for an alternative is because they know that what is happening today is unjust. And I agree with them. What is happening today is very unjust. But let's not let Islam be the scapegoat or the victim for their injustice, because that would be unjust of us to do that. Islam should never be the scapegoat or the victim. The Muslim, on the other hand, the way that the Muslim is behaving today, the way the injustice that the Muslim is perpetuating, that should be corrected. And who should correct that if everyone is equal? The one who has knowledge should be the one to correct that. Not that the one who has no knowledge should be the one to correct that, because that will be a situation we find ourselves in today. The fact that the Muslims are in such a terrible situation is because the one with no knowledge is put in a place of one who is supposed to have knowledge. This is the problem we find ourselves in. So how do we solve this problem? How we solve it is we have to put the one who has knowledge in the place that is right and just for him. That is his proper place. And that will be justice, not only to knowledge itself, but to the person who has knowledge and to the idea of knowledge itself. That's what we need to do. Therefore, I hope that my criticism here is not misconstrued as harsh. I'm just saying that if you would permit this piece of advice, let us first understand our own tradition before we search for answers and solutions in another tradition which is alien to ours, because in the end it does not fit. When we talk about one worldview, when in this case the worldview of Islam, and we talk about another worldview, these two are not compatible. These two are not symbiotic. What I mean is this: supposing you were to take a pool and you fill this pool with water, and you fill another pool next to it with also with water, two pools side by side, and in one pool you start putting a little bit of blue paint in it, and in the other pool you put a little bit of red paint in it, just to distinguish one from the other. So you say that this is the worldview of Islam because this the pool is stained blue, and then you say this is the Western worldview, the one that is stained red. Now, is there anything that is the same about them? No. One is blue, one is red. Now you take the teaspoon and you start borrowing from one worldview and putting it in the other one. You take the red paint and you put it in the other one, in the blue pool, and you keep on doing that. You borrow little by little. Gradually, this one that was blue will turn purple. It will no longer be the worldview of Islam. It'll be something else. It'll be something confused. That is what we are gradually doing. We are borrowing from one without understanding our own. As a result, we become misguided ourselves, and we have corrupted what has been given to us. That is what we are doing now. This corruption of knowledge is the one who is put in the position of authority in terms of knowledge is not fit to be there. It's unjust to him, unjust to knowledge. And what he is doing now because of this injustice is he is corrupting that knowledge itself. And as a result, what we think should be right is not heeded. Because who are we, they'll say. We are not the ones in the position of knowledge, in that position of knowledge to give any advice. And this is wrong. This is very wrong. This is a sin, actually, according to Islam. I can understand the frustrations of the youth. I myself have the same frustration. We share the same frustration. What is the solution? Educate ourselves. We continually say this: educate, 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 in the proper manner. How do we do this? We search for true knowledge, proper knowledge. We search for those who have knowledge. Listen to the words of Al-Juwayni, Al-Ghazali, and all those people who were in the past, all those great scholars whose names are still on our tongue and who will continually live on our tongues because of their knowledge. So it's pointless to ask, who amongst us has knowledge? Look at those who are following in this tradition. The fact that Al-Ghazali's name survives till today is because precisely he is one with knowledge. Al-Juwayni's name survives until this day is precisely because he is one with knowledge. Now, no point asking who is it who has knowledge. Look at those people. Look at the followers of those people. I don't mean the followers in terms of who are their students, although that is also true, but the tradition itself, that tradition of learning that is continued till today. Look for them. which means you yourself have to know knowledge. What is knowledge? You have to know this. I don't think I can be any clearer. All we can say is, before we start looking for different kinds of political and philosophical ideologies, first examine the worldview of Islam, examine the religion of Islam, examine the hadith of the Prophet. And I know this is not something which you are used to, because the pervading trend today is for the so-called ulama to just memorize a few verses from the Quran and give their own tafsir as if they are qualified to do so. No one in the khutbah Jum'ah ever talks about the Prophet's hadith, when in actual fact, why are we not talking about the Prophet's hadith? There are so many thousands of them that we can discuss or that we can talk about for the Friday sermon. That will be good advice for the Muslims, rather than getting up on the platform and giving a political speech. That is not supposed to be done during the Friday prayer. You are supposed to impart some kind of advice to the Muslims, advice from the Prophet. After all, the khatib is supposed to remind himself that he is standing there representing the Prophet Muhammad. What nonsense will you be doing if you are talking about politics on the pulpit? You're not supposed to do that. The Prophet never did that. What gives you the authority to do so? Who do you think you are? You can't do that. You are supposed to impart some advice, some good advice. And who better to give the advice than the Prophet himself? Not you. I think that's all for now. We can continue again in the future. Thank you.